Mirror humans. Okay, the book's over. Nobody's looking. Let's talk about mirror humans. Oh, you haven't heard of mirror humans? Well, let's back up a moment. Life is made of lots of little molecules, and these molecules make up important bigger molecules like DNA, RNA, and proteins. Some molecules exhibit what's called chirality, from the Greek word for hand. If a molecule has chirality, that basically means there's a mirror version of it. To wrap your head around mirror versions of things, think about your hands. They look exactly the same, but no matter how you rotate your left hand, it won't be exactly the same as the right. If you have your palms up, your left thumb will point left and your right thumb will point right. Each hand has all of the same parts, but they're flipped as if through a mirror. When you have two molecules that are mirror images of one another, one of these molecules is designated as the left-hand version and the other as the right-handed version. Intriguingly, life seems to favour a certain handedness for particular tasks. For example, almost all amino acids, which you may remember are the building blocks of proteins, are in the left-handed form. Why nature abhors right-handed amino acids is a topic of debate, but even the amino acids we find in space tend to be left-handed. But screw nature. Whatever her reasoning is, there's no known physical reason that we couldn't create an organism out of completely opposite-handed molecules in the lab. A mirror organism, if you like. Some scientists, including Dr. Church, are working to create simple mirror organisms, with the hope of one day creating larger and larger such creatures. Why exactly would we want this? Well, for one reason, it's awesome. You can create something that looks like a nice little kitty, but it's totally incompatible with the rest of the life on the planet, perhaps even the universe. For example, mirror-opposite organisms would need to eat mirror food in order to be able to digest it. They would also be undigestible to all predators. Best of all, a mirror-opposite organism would be completely immune to all diseases, because all living parasites and pathogens evolved to infect organisms with normal chirality. And, if it worked, we could scale up to making mirror-opposite humans. Mirror humans would be immune to all of the diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries. Malaria? No problem. Tuberculosis? Meh. Okay, so there'd be downsides too. They'd need mirror food, perhaps mirror microbes, and if a mirror disease evolved, they'd need mirror medicine. They'd also need mirror partners if they wanted children. Yeah. What of love between mirror original and mirror opposite humans? Couples comprised of different mirror type people would, fit together, but they would not produce any living offspring because you can't mix left-handed and right-handed people when it comes to genetic material. Look, we're not chirality bigots. We think heterochiral couples might get along just fine, but we worry about the children. Mostly because they wouldn't get to exist. Although mirror-opposite people would look pretty much the same to our eyes, they would be members of a separate species. Being genetically isolated populations, we would slowly go from being similar but incompatible to having different physical and physiological characteristics over time. Given that we mirror originals would be comparatively disease-riddled, it probably wouldn't be long before the mirror opposites looked at us like we were a shambling horde of zombies. Speaking of which, what is this chapter doing here in the graveyard? In an earlier version of this book, mirror organisms were going to be a subsection in our chapter on synthetic biology, but after some reading, we were a little confused and we had some doubts about the utility of mirror organisms. Making entirely new types of beings just so that they wouldn't get sick seems like a rather circuitous path to wellness, and it was our sense that this idea isn't so much a scientific field as a really neat idea that's batted around by a small number of synthetic bio nerds. Mirror microbes might someday have research utility. For instance, you could study mirror smallpox without a risk of it getting loose to infect people, but even that possibility is a very, very long way away. But if mirror organisms are a no-go, mirror molecules might still be amazing. Like, what if you could make a tasty sugar that you couldn't actually metabolize? Well, a scientist named Gilbert Levon had this idea in the 1980s and actually discovered a tasty mirror sugar that could be used as a no-calorie sweetener. Unfortunately, it turned out to be so expensive that the process never caught on. In a related bit of gustatory history, a product that mimicked oil called Olestra was put on the market in the 1990s. Olestra made nice, crispy potato chips without all of those fat calories. However, one downside was that some eaters of Olestra products experienced an increased rate of anal oil leakage. This being one of the less good leakages, Olestra has largely been shelved. We don't know what the side effects of eating mirror sugar would be, and perhaps that's for the best. One less disgusting fact we wondered about was whether you could detect mirror humans based on how they responded to mirror versions of flavour molecules. It just so happens that the molecule that gives caraway seeds their carawayish taste is a perfect mirror of the molecule that gives spearmint its spearminty taste. We wanted to know if a mirror human would think that Jewish rye tasted like some unholy sort of spearmint bread. To find out, we talked to Dr. Stephen Munger, who is the director of the Centre for Smell and Taste at the University of Florida. First, he politely pointed out that we were asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether caraway or spearmint would taste different, it's whether or not they would smell different. Quote, "Taste happens in the mouth and is limited to things that elicit sensations of sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami, and maybe fat. Flavour combines taste and smell, so for many spices, the major contribution of the flavour is the smell." End quote. So we learned something that, in retrospect, we were surprised we hadn't realised earlier. But we still needed to know. Can we use tasty rye bread to see if mirror people walk among us? It turns out it's hard to say. In fact, it's hard even to think about. For mirror humans to smell the mirror molecule, their smell receptors would have to be mirrored such that they would bind to spearmint molecules and send a "I smell caraway" message to the brain. This is possible, but it's not obvious that it would work this way in practice. As Dr. Munger told us, probably as he wondered how the hell he got into this conversation, quote, "At the end of the day, this is really in the realm of guesswork." End quote. So basically what we're saying is, if you have a friend who thinks that rye bread is gross, we can't be 100% certain that Dr. Church didn't build him in a secret lab.